Twitter. It is the only social media app that I know of where you can say so much and so little at the same time. Welcome to So to Speak. I'm Evan Mead.
I'm Lyle Groniger.
And tonight we are going to be talking about Twitter. Mm-hmm. Now, and this was kind of Lyle's idea, because you've had, some qualms with this social media app.
I've never used it, and quite frankly, I never want to. And I think I'm better off that way.
My background is nice and simple. I got a Twitter account right when it was new. I barely used it, but I did go on a stint where I used it semi-regularly in 2018. That was mainly to engage in some political back and forth with a rather right-leaning friend of mine. Sorry.
Well, that sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Well, but it got me. It was a peculiar way of tapping into a part of our culture that's overlooked. So, our guest tonight is actually, he's been on the show occasionally, and we're welcoming him back because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but you use... welcome back, Jody Aberdeen, first of all.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so...
Hello, Jody.
Do you use Twitter still to this day?
Yeah, but it's... I use it mostly for retweets, but like yourself, I got an account when it was pretty... Those were good days, weren't they?
Yeah.
The whole thing started as a buddy of mine, one of my fraternity brothers. He was always kind of an early adopter, right? So when this thing came out called Twitter, he hopped on and he was like literally like tweeting stuff. And it was back in the day. I don't know if you remember. People used to set up like their alter egos. Like you had your persona, but then you had like the evil Evan Mead who would like say all these things. That like just stuff from your id, right? This is way before people started to really kind of delve into your history, right? This is when you were making the chat history or the tweet history.
Is this why Donald Trump had to call himself real Donald Trump?
I think so. I don't know. I can't speak for him. We're saying his name again, but no. But you're right. Like I get it. I think a lot of those people who set up the real X. If they're not famous, they're probably just ordinary people that are just hopping off of the trend of famous people doing that before the verified thing.
Yeah.
And no, I mean it was great. Like it was just weird. Yeah. It's like, what is the advantage of this? Is basically the Facebook status update adapted, and that's all you get is the status update.
Yeah.
So it was a kind of novelty, a little bit confusing. But then it got organized like everything else, right?
Yeah.
And now it is, depending on how it's got the algorithm too. It's the same way all of these apps do. I want to say, so when I say that I feel like Twitter is more often like the dumping ground of the human id, like the cesspool of the worst impulses of humanity, I have to question what tweets I've been retweeting. Because if the algorithm's feeding it back to me. But at the same time, as we've seen over the years, right? Like, you can, if you have anything remotely sus in your tweet history, and somebody decides to go do a little fishing, they could probably find something that you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a time, I think we all have short memories. I'm not claiming to have a long memory, but around 2000, somewhere between 2008 and 2012, people were just saying, that was when we realized, like, the whole conversation around what is toxic, what is harmful, what is violent, right? Like, where we define the stuff that we were saying before, right? Like, about dating or about women if you're a man, straight man or something, right? Like when you start saying these things that we considered to be jokes, and then suddenly people started saying that's not funny. And on a case-by-case basis, you'd have to evaluate how funny or appropriate or offensive it was.
Right.
But it was kind of in that sweet spot, I think, in that late ooze, early 2010s, that I was using it the most. And I guess I don't know if they've had the changes after that. I don't know if there's a corporate structure change at that time, or they developed an algorithm. But I remember there was a point where I was like, I don't want to be on this platform anymore.
Yeah.
It's like people are just shouting at each other now. It's now, before it was like the novelty's long gone. Today I do use it, strangely enough, for the news. I don't have cable TV.
Right.
It's not even that I'm not one of these folks that distrusts mainstream media on principle. I'm aware of how they distort a lot of stuff. But whatever distortions the mainstream media has, it's amplified by 10 million on social media by virtue of the fact that anyone can tweet anything. If the algo picks it up, suddenly you see the crazy things start trending, right? Whatever it is. And you can make anything trend if you have a movement or a group in sufficiently large numbers. So a casual observer who's on his pee break from his job at the office is just kind of he's doing his business. He takes a look at the phone and is like, oh, look, this is trending, Trudeau fascist or Trump fascist or who's some innocuous person fascist, Mark Hamill. Never Mark Hamill, but you know what I mean. He's probably the only good person in the world.
He hasn't gone to the dark side just yet.
No, he has not. No. But it's when you see this, or Betty White, God rest her, but we would see her trending for the last few years and think, oh my God, this is it. And then it actually happened on New Year's.
Yeah.
Damn it.
I remember in 2016, there was can we not lose? Because 2016, one of the things people remember about 2016, there was a lot that happened, but that year was a painful jab at the soul for celebrity deaths. And we're talking people that several generations grew up with. In 2016, we lost David Bowie, we lost Alan Rickman, we lost Carrie Fisher, we lost George Michael. And so there was a trend. Betty White started trending in the week between Christmas and New Year's, right before New Year's 2017, and it's why is she trending? Oh, because they don't want her to die, and we're just happy she's still with us. And then that caught up with us 5 years later in 2021, where her untimely passing came on New Year's Eve of 2021. So and a lot of people actually kind of took that as a bad omen for 2022. Going into the year that was we lost one of the purest souls that humanity has ever graced. But anyway, so
I was going to say, it's a good thing that they so far into 2022 they had no basis to think that. I mean,
right?
What's gone wrong so far this year? Have you noticed anything? I haven't noticed.
Oh, I mean. There's this there's a conflict going on somewhere. All seriousness, if that comes up tonight, because that's one of the things about Twitter, we're in a very unique and scary scenario. We are able to watch a civilized sovereign nation get invaded by a global superpower in real time. We are watching things unfold on an almost minute-to-minute basis. So if we do comment on anything related to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we're going to just, full disclaimer, we don't know how true any of it is because, unfortunately, we've got, Kremlin bots distorting Western information sources, and we just have to be careful. And I don't want to endanger, anyone in Ukraine. I don't want to endanger any innocent folks in Russia who may be susceptible to propaganda. So the point is, we're just going to ease up on that. But yeah, and it's a heavy topic, quite honestly. But yeah. And that's it. If we're talking TikTok, it's even worse over there apparently, where there's and I don't understand. Okay, listen, I'm an elder millennial. Okay, I grew up. Define elder millennial.
1980.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, Gen X.
Gen X.
41.
Gen-
I'm not Gen X. That's the weird part. People noticed me. Nobody notices Gen X.
Oh yeah.
But no. My value system more than my age is aligned with the millennial generation, right? In that sense of wanting to do good for the world, being told that the world is going to be one way, and really getting smacked hard when we went to university and enter the workforce, etc., etc., etc.
Right.
What I've run into is I really thought that I would be the old person who kept up with all of the tech, right? I was like, I'm never going to be like those guys who still have to pay money with like coins and who still, I thought I was like, I'm gonna learn all the apps. I'm gonna learn all the programs.
Yeah.
I may have found my limit. My version of not learning tech, and I believe it's TikTok. I'm on TikTok,
right?
But I lurk TikTok because it's like,
okay,
wow, and so I think it could be worse for subsequent generations. But you're right, like the disinformation. Part of that is that it spreads so quick. It's like you can't. By the time you reel it in, you've got a few people who've already shut their mental traps and their cognitive traps to like say, okay, this is the truth now. I'm not going to listen to anything else. And that's also another little gift that Twitter's given us.
Well,
in that respect.
Going back to the whole reason why it was actually Lyle's idea to kind of start this discussion because it was like he quite often whenever Twitter comes up, it's like I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. I want to kind of we talked about like Jody and I how we use Twitter. Like I stopped when the political discourse in the year 2019 got less and less fun to deal with, and I was worried it was going to lead to potential harassment, like on my part. So, like it was going to lead to potential harassment. Like, so I was like, okay, I'm going to take a step back. So, and then I just kept seeing more and more controversial takes. Quite honestly, I feel like my interest in Twitter died was when it was around the time Trump went after Ilhan Omar and the squad, telling them to go back where they came from. And I remember getting into a back and forth about it, and then this with a guy I've been friends with for a long time, and then a guy who follows him for his right-wing talking points comes and interjects into the tweet thread and says, "Hey, why are you friends with a leftist? The leftist being me." And then I calmly responded, "Dude, I identify as progressive. I don't identify as liberal. I don't identify as leftist." It's just that's where it became clear to me that our algorithms make us an echo chamber. So that's where I lost interest in Twitter and don't use it hardly. I will only go on Twitter maybe once a month to check up on things. But even then, like I know that because I have, people who engage in right-wing discourse on Twitter, if I'm ever curious to see what right-wing Twitter has to say, I'll go check that out. But yeah, that's just me. Like I have my reasons for why I distance myself from Twitter. Lyle wanted to start this because he's got some, things that just. I'll let you speak from yourself.
I was gonna say I've been quiet for a while.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
People do really stupid things on Twitter, and what ends up happening when you do that is that it kind of comes and bites you in the ass. There are many instances of people doing or saying things that eventually are brought up much later, like you said, like, oh, someone can just fish through your history. And I guess that's true for any social media, but with Twitter, I just notice a lot of, like, celebrities that end up getting in hot water for it. Or, like, people who are, like, in, political parties. Well, I remember the first incidence of, like, a bad tweet that ruined someone's life. I think that was Anthony Weiner. You remember that fella?
Mm-hmm.
Buddy sent really lived up to his name and sent a wiener pic, and that went viral, and then that ruined his marriage, ruined his political career. Had to retire.
You know what? With a name like that, it was his destiny.
It's kind of
makes you believe, right? A little bit, just a little bit.
Kind of prophetic, Prophetic and pathetic.
Yeah.
I mean, it was either that or he's gonna work as a hot dog vendor, and I guess when that didn't pan out, he went into politics. So of course, he's gonna go this way.
Yeah. Oh god,
Yeah.
I bet his kids got picked on so bad.
Yeah.
But Yeah, but you know what? That's what you get. And there's others. There's like Roseanne Barr. There's that in the shoe. She's always been kind of like outspoken and controversial, but like when you make like a really off joke at the expense of a person of color, and you're like, oh, that was just a bad joke. Oh, don't take me off my own show. We just got a revival. No.
Yeah.
And then she just straight up retires. And then her show gets replaced by Tim Allen's show last month.
Yeah. I
like that show.
I remember someone interjecting. I think it was the Amazing Atheist, T.J. Kirk. He basically interjected and said, like, the networks had this plan. Like, there was a reason why they did not cancel Tim Allen, but they canceled Roseanne Barr, because Roseanne Barr is fading from... Like, there's a somewhat conspiratorial, like, belief that it's, like, it has to do with, like, how relevant you are to society and to discourse, too, because Roseanne Barr isn't she, going back to the whole age dynamic, like, isn't she, like, don't people look to her, I'm not familiar, I'm going to let you two talk, because...
What's the question?
The question is, how does the current generation portray Roseanne Barr? Because I don't really know much about Roseanne Barr.
Well, she was very relevant.
I don't know. I don't know a lot about her, to be honest.
She was relevant in the 80s and 90s. She was a stand-up comedian. She had her own show in the 90s that got pretty popular. It was one of John Goodman's earliest things. Yeah. So there's that. She was in a very easily forgotten Disney movie called Home on the Range.
Oh,
I think I forced you to watch that.
You didn't know. You didn't.
No, you walked in on me forcing myself to watch it. That's
yeah.
I remember she was on an episode of Futurama.
Oh,
but she did stunts. Like there was one time she sang the national anthem at a national baseball game, and she did intentionally bad. And she grabbed her groin and spat on live TV, and everyone's like, "That was that." President George H.W. Bush was just like, this is an affront to our nation, and it shall not be allowed.
So H, his father, not W.
Yeah, not W.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
H.
Herbert. Yeah, Herbert.
Yeah, but, that's the kind of thing where it's like, I feel like Roseanne must have had a really bad day with that tweet that she sent to that, what was it, Congresswoman? I can't forget the full story.
Well, I can pull it up, but... I do remember that she scapegoated a drug she was on, and the drug company actually had to go on record and say, yeah, our drug doesn't cause you to be racist.
Temporary racism, temporary bad judgment.
Yeah, so...
Symptoms may include. That's another good example. I remember there's this one journalist. I remember after I think the day after Nelson Mandela died, there's this one journalist who just thought it would be so fun to post Nelson Mandela on Twitter.
Wow. What?
And he got fired the exact same day.
That of all times to be an edgelord, what does now here no.
That's like a joke you sit on and say, does this really deserve to be online when I have a platform of my own that I've built over the years?
Well, if he was a comedian, it might have had some merit, but...
Not even.
Yeah, not even,
joke.
exactly.
It's a stupid joke that's, not needed.
It's like a Yo Mama joke.
It's just kindergarten level shit.
Exactly,
so,
yeah.
Alright, so let me ask you this more contemporary example. Gina Carano.
Yeah, Gina Carano was a good one too. I was about to mention her. She compared. What was it? What was the system that she was against?
It was something about the vaccination measures.
And she compared it to Nazi Germany.
She said so people getting rounded up and put on rail cars to go to Auschwitz. And it's and then she gets fired from The Mandalorian as a result of the outcry. And what's notable about that is so many of the people in that movement were ready to defend her and said that it was an overreach and it shouldn't be fired. It's and I keep that one was because I'm a Mandalorian fan and I was I was watching it. Was really looking forward to the Cara Dune series. She had a show lined up.
Oh no!
And Marshall, what was it? Marshall Dune, who she was going to be, right? And it's like, yeah, that's disappointing. They probably had to rewrite, Favreau and Filoni probably had to rewrite a big, replot the entire thing, right? Because I'm sure they had some tie-ins with the other shows they were planning.
Yeah.
But I was like, if this was a job, right? If I was at work and I said that, I could, no matter how good of a job I'm doing at the job, I'm probably still fired.
Yeah,
right?
it's not an acceptable thing to say.
Yeah, and because it took place over Twitter. At that point, we had been warped. I'm positive the last 2 years of pandemic stuff, which has seen us really see the world through these devices, not just Twitter, right, but just cell phones and smartphones in general, has warped us to the point now that we take that stuff personally, and so even though we know. We're so attached to the benefits of a person in terms of their work, in this case, acting work, that we're actually willing to forgive them expressing a really, really shitty opinion.
Didn't she also get in trouble for putting her pronouns as Zeep and Zop or something?
Oh, I didn't hear about that.
She was making fun of people who pick pronouns on Twitter,
like trans people, or gender queer people, right, who are non-binary, and it's like. Yeah, I mean, we have free speech.
We do.
And we're also not shielded from and this is really, I think, the underlying question with Twitter is how protected are we from the consequences of expressing that speech?
Mm-hmm.
And should we be? Because if we are, what does that say for free speech generally? Because then now you have to, if you're protected, that means the government is still regulating speech.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, how free is it, right?
Yeah. Public opinion's a fickle thing.
Yeah.
As one episode of Simpsons will proudly point out.
Oh yes. We're just so we're clear. We're talking about Homer Badman, right?
Yes.
Oh god, that's
what happened.
Homer Badman. Do you remember the episode where Homer goes to a candy convention, drives the babysitter home, and grabs a gummy DeMilo off her bum, and the next thing you know, the rest of the episode is Homer Simpson, harasser of women, and
he gets canceled.
No. He got hashtag canceled before hashtags even existed. I think that my theory with that episode, this was before Twitter too, so it's and by the way, our good friend Josh, who also is a regular on the show, he pointed out something. Marge has a quote at the end of the episode because Homer is essentially exonerated because Groundskeeper Willie filmed the whole thing and new evidence presented itself that shows, he wasn't actually committing sexual harassment. He was literally grabbing the piece of candy off her butt. So it's like, and then Marge says, as long as everyone is videotaping everyone else, justice will be served. And then I thought of, that instantly makes you think of BLM and the resurgence of it after George Floyd, may he rest too. So, yeah, and that's the other thing. It goes back to the whole concept of online echo chambers, but I think what Lyle was getting at was just the qualms of knowing that something you wrote 10 years ago, not even something you write in the now can get you fired, but even something 10 years ago. Case in point, your boy, Mr. Gunn.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually just about to mention that. The only time I think I've ever seen someone actually come back from a backlash from Twitter would have to be James Gunn, who was I've followed his career since his beginning, and he's always been an edgy guy. He got his start from Trauma Pictures of all things.
Yeah.
So he's always had this acidic sense of humor. Yeah. But the thing is some guy after Guardians of the Galaxy, after he became a household name. Someone actually dug through his Twitter and found a lot of, was it pedophilia jokes?
Yes. Now,
yeah, a lot of that.
Now, context, that someone was a right-wing pundit who is, it's the classic, I decry SJW culture and I hate cancel culture, but I'm going out of my way to dig up dirt on left-leaning celebrities to get them canceled. So this guy, Mike Cernovich, dug up really old tweets of James Gunn that he wrote back, and the tweets they're pretty messed up. I get that he has an out there sense of humor, but Mike Cernovich dug these things up, and next thing you know, Disney's like, yeah, you're gone. We can't have you work on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 anymore.
Yeah.
And then
he made Suicide Squad.
The Suicide Squad.
And during that, he got rehired for the job at Guardians.
Well,
I think, was it a petition that caused that, or was Disney that hard up trying to find a replacement?
Well, there would have had to have been many petitions, but what stood out to me, what was so peculiar was the cast rallied to his defense. Now, think about this. Do you remember when Anthony Rapp, when the Me Too movement first took off, Anthony Rapp made a confession that came forward about what Kevin Spacey allegedly did to him. The next day, Kevin Spacey writes a tweet saying, "I am officially coming out as gay," and then the whole internet was like, "Whoa, like what's going on here?" Like, so, and then the context was, allegedly Kevin Spacey molested Anthony Rapp back when Anthony Rapp was a really young actor just breaking into the industry, and Kevin Spacey was obviously a little older and had more experience under his belt. So, but that the Anthony Rapp allegation like started a chain reaction of tons of people. Next thing you know, no more House of Cards. Well, the show didn't get canceled.
He got killed off.
They just kicked him off. But the point is, I don't recall the cast of... Okay, with the exception of Ansel Elgort, who I think got canceled later for something related. Ansel Elgort... I remember Kevin Spacey wrote a supposedly heartfelt apology on Instagram, and I remember Ansel Elgort looking at it. But... like, the cast of House of Cards didn't come to his defense. Like, Robin Wright didn't make any statements.
I mean, Evan, the thing is, it's one thing to make pedophilia jokes on Twitter. It's another to have, like, actual sexual allegations against you.
Yeah, that's true.
That's not as easy to, like, you know, lean for. Or, like, you know, come to the
like
defense.
within the scope of what we're talking about is exclusively, like, you've done nothing, whatever, no matter what else is going on in your real life. Let's assume you haven't done anything like that, but you make an off-color joke.
Yeah.
That's why
or you're trying to be edgy one day, right?
Yeah.
Or you're pissed off, you're having a day, you're expressing frustration, you're venting, you put it on social, and then suddenly the wrong person catches it, retweets it, and then with the header that says, "This is what we don't do," right? And then they pile on. That's more of what we're talking about, I think, right?
Yeah.
It's funny. Like that. Remember, Evan, you remember the movie Chef?
Yes.
Remember what happened to Jon Favreau's character? That's exactly what happened.
He creates a Twitter and he starts a feud with.
He's like, no, don't post that. You can't delete it after. That's all you gotta do.
Yeah.
And the movie has a conflict.
Yeah.
That movie is literally all about getting canceled by Twitter.
Well, I mean, like the moral.
I mean, that's the inciting incident.
The moral of the story is the cancellation was the inciting incident for him to go do it because he was a creative.
He was stuck in a rut.
He was a creative genius stuck doing things for people. I feel like that was an allegory. Chef was a tasty allegory for how Jon Favreau feels with the studio system sometimes. Because the whole plot is he has to work for a restaurant and making food he's not passionate about. He's like, why not just go break away from them and do your own thing? Like, get a food truck. No, I don't want to get a food truck. I feel like that's an allegory for how he feels about the studio system sometimes. Because no one has benefited from the studio system more than Jon Favreau.
But back to our point. Sometimes I wonder, like, what do you do after you're canceled?
That's a good question.
They mostly just fade out of relevancy. Like, didn't TJ Miller, didn't he send tweets about sending a bomb threat to a train?
Allegedly. Well, I don't know if that had to do with Twitter, but apparently
he posted on social media that he was doing something like that and he was being all sus.
I'm not familiar with the story, but all I know is that he pretended to bomb an Amtrak, and that was a big no-no, and now no one.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean. Oh my god! There's a lot of things.
Because that's terrorism, you know. But yeah, the whole.
I don't know. This wasn't Twitter related. It's just he made a call or something, like an emergency call.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why.
So, I think it's kind of so. What happens when in my opinion, Jody, you can defer to this. When someone gets hashtag canceled, they have two options. They can either do something completely unrelated to what they were doing before, they can go into a new industry or a new medium, or they can
not like
plan a comeback. And depending on your political, if it's political related, like going back to the told Gina Carano, instantly when Disney gave her the boot, Ben Shapiro of the Daily Wire is like, yeah, come over to my network and we'll make a movie. And apparently she's going to do that. This is my bias talking, but I'm kind of sad that we're not going to see her spin-off with Star Wars, and we're going to see whatever cringy thing she does with the Daily Wire. Because apparently I looked into what they want to do. Apparently it's a conservative beat for beat propaganda piece on some issue that I think it's about pro-choice versus pro-life or something. I don't know, but
well,
yeah.
That sounds riveting.
Well, yeah, like I can tell when a movie or show has a political agenda, like it reeks. Like that's why, not to digress, but we've had some Jody, have you seen Don't Look Up?
I have, yeah.
We've had some back and I watched that with my friend Michael, and Lyle watched it at a later date. We had some back and forth. I thought it was okay. My Letterboxd, I'm active on Letterboxd, and my review of that movie basically says it's an okay movie, but if you're sick of politics, don't watch it. Seriously.
Yeah, it's stressful. It was stressful to watch if you care about the issues.
Yeah.
And partly because it wasn't so subtle.
Yeah.
Pretty on the nose.
It's always tough, right? The best stories that have a political message are really cagey. They're very subtle about how they convey it.
Yeah.
Right? And this was not subtle. I mean, Don't Look Up was anything but subtle. But going back to the point about, like, when somebody's canceled, they're essentially kicked out of the village.
Yeah.
Right, and like social media, I've been on this kick myself outside of the subject about community building, right?
Right.
We have, in modern life, like, several different, like, numerous substitutions for, like, an ancestral village, right? Like a place that, growing up in the same place with the same people, connected to each other and that. So, like, you have somewhere to go. Extended family, neighbors, right? We don't have that typically. You guys are living in Toronto. I'm out here I'm in a town adjacent to Hamilton, but it's still a city, right? And we don't have lots of places to belong to. And especially when times are tough, we get tribal. So Gina Carano is not part. Now, this is the strange thing. Outside of her opinions, I generally like her. Like I've seen the work that she's done, right?
Yeah.
And it's like I don't. But that's even me saying that is dangerous to people within. Like because we don't have these communities. Some of the closest things that we do have are political movements. Right? We tend to get the same people who think the same thing, and within the lib left, or like that progressive side of the spectrum, or the or the compass, or whatever you use. I like these political compass. Within the lib left, anyone who has a belief system that's rooted in that knows that we eat each other all the time. Because we have this emphasis on purity, like how pure of a lefty are you? How pure progressive are you? How dare you play, this idea of high principle, right? Which means that even me saying something like, I actually enjoyed her performance in The Mandalorian, has nothing to do. I have two different opinions about what she said versus, on Twitter about the Holocaust versus her performance, right?
Yeah. So
there's nuance there. 100%, 110% condemn what she said. Totally understand why Disney fired her, right?
Yeah.
But look at that. She has her own little substitution for a community in like that whole live right movement, if you want to call it, or off right movement, depending on where you put Shapiro.
Yeah.
This week, and he ends up like, and then she ends up making more content for that community.
Yeah.
Whatever we think about it, but we perceive it on the outside, and it's like when you say you're coming back, it's like, are you canceled totally, or are you just canceled from the place you were in before?
Yeah.
And I think like part of that reactionary right wing thing against this whole idea of canceling, right? It partially explains why they go out of their way to say provocative shit.
Yeah.
It's like I'm 16. This Nicolas Cage. He had this line in The Rock. He's just like, isn't there a lot of this? I'm 16 and I'm angry at my father energy. Like, grow up.
Which is hilarious because Michael Bay movies reek of that energy.
Yeah, it's like, but that's just it. Like he said it in a Michael Bay movie, and it's actually kind of the same energy. It's like as soon as you see somebody, recently somebody tweeted this inexplicable, like own the libs type of tweet, right? And it's like, I don't really understand. I don't know if you saw it.
Who wrote it?
That's what I'm trying to find. Hang on, I'm going to see if I can get it here.
That's interesting.
So fun fact, I saw it on Instagram of all places. Fun fact, using Instagram on your desktop, not the best. Not the best.
I've tried it. Move. It's not convenient.
Yeah, it's rough.
No, this interspace. So the tweet was from a guy named, he is Clay Higgins.
Okay.
Republican Clay Higgins, Representative Clay Higgins.
Oh.
He is I believe he's serving currently. Oh, come on now. I'm going to find out where he is. I think he's in Louisiana. Yeah, he's a representative Republican from Louisiana, right? And he tweeted this thing. It said, "You millennial leftists who never lived one day under nuclear threat can now reflect upon your woke sky.
Oh.
You make quite a non-binary fuss to save the world from intercontinental ballistic tweets."
Oh my god! Like I was like, I don't know what you're saying. Like, is that meant to is that a jab at how you knew Trump was writing mean tweets, but you didn't care and you just let him do whatever he wanted?
No, it's a failed edgy tweet.
Yeah,
presumably by a boomer who just thought he would be edgy on Twitter, right? And I'm assuming, I don't know more than what I've seen, right?
Well,
but those words and those combinations amount to just word salad, right? It's just salad, and it's like
buzzwords.
It's funny you should mention word salads because look at Jordan Peterson when he when he took to Twitter, because in not to like intermingle this with our personal growth stuff, but Jordan Peterson strikes me as the type of guy who, if he had blown up in popularity like 8 years in 2010 instead of 2018, I feel like he would have the generation would have been kinder to him. You know, misogynistic and controversial things aside that he says. But I remember in 2018 he got into someone wrote an article critical of his talking points and of his book that was blowing up 12 Years for Life, and his response, he didn't even know how to do a Twitter thread properly, so he just wrote one tweet after the other, and he doesn't know how to make a thread because he's old. But it's like, "You're a racist and I'd slap you." Like, so you get that? Like, that's him trying to be edgy too. Yeah.
But like the idea behind edgy is that you stay on the edge. You don't tip it over into the actual act of saying I'm gonna smack you, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna smack you is not edgy.
That's a threat.
Yeah, that's like what happened.
At that point, you're in a direct. If you really want to get into the legal side, you're in a. And none of us here are lawyers, but we can assume safely that that's a threat of violence.
Yeah.
Somebody could easily hear that, and given how litigious, especially if you're an American, right? Given how litigious society can be, right? It's understandable you get lawyers knocking at your door, etc., for saying stuff like that. But it's like you're trying too hard. But again, it goes back to this. That's how we perceive that whole, right-wing contingent, right? That community. They're the other village. They're like the rival village, right? Like next door, the neighbors you hate. It's like if we're Springfield, they're Shelbyville, right?
That's a good analogy.
And they got the, and they have some points. I'm sure, like you can't have a community that is entirely wrong, while that believes it's wrong. They think they're right about stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Where they, and I'm sure you could find some not incomprehensible, but incoherent leftists.
Yeah.
All the time. Well, right? It's just that we don't see it because we're in it, right?
Yeah.
And or we we're willing to ignore it, or we happen to just believe it ourselves, right? I mean, there's nonsense everywhere.
Well, speaking of cringy left tweets, I want to call out everyone on this show. Like, do you remember, Lyle? I think you and I saw this in real time. Do you remember when there was that Asian American lady who got a job, who got hired by the New York Times, and some of her critics point out, well, that's not fair. Why is she getting hired by the New York Times? She was writing tweets about how she hated white people and how she wanted to basically commit violence against them. And then a guy who we follow, the Amazing Atheist, who we've mentioned earlier, he writes a tweet parodying her logic. You know, I hate so-and-so. I wonder if the New York Times will hire me. And guess what happened to TJ? He got temporarily suspended from Twitter, and his account's been reinstated since. But I remember at the time, like, there was like a big hypocrisy scandal, because it's like, why does Twitter? I feel like this episode could be another hour long if we get into the inconsistency with big tech companies choosing who to ban for what reason. Like,
then you got guys like Milo Yiannopoulos who got banned permanently.
Because
that's like the guy we were talking about earlier is like edgy, but almost totally to a fault.
Well, now, Jody, how familiar are you with the Milo Yiannopoulos getting banned from Twitter incident?
So I gotta confess, I have a conservative family. Right?
Okay, sure.
There was a point where, so I'm the outlier in this respect.
All right.
And there was this point where they would talk about, a couple of members would talk about Milo on a first name basis if they knew the guy, right?
Yeah.
It was the whole thing where you say something's triggering. I mean, for me, that manifests as I'm so overwhelmed by how much work I have to put my brain through to refute even one thing that this guy has said in a way that you will understand, that I just tune them out for a while, right?
Right, yeah.
Because all of these different biases kick in these types of conversations, and it's fed by Twitter, again, fed by different social media platforms all the time. So I know that he was kicked out. I don't know why he was kicked out. I can't really comment on him. Just that I can comment on the impact of having somebody like that shape your worldview. Because like years later, I haven't heard that guy's name in years now. Years later, we're still dealing with the impact of that. And we will be dealing with the impact of similar influencers on people that we know for a long time too. But that takes away from your point. Yeah, go ahead.
The incident in question was he didn't go at, I think he got into like a Twitter back and forth with Leslie Jones, who back in 2016 was set to play Patty in the crappy Ghostbusters remake. How the hell did that movie become the most? I'm stealing a joke from Screen Junkies and Honest Trailers. How did a movie about catching ghosts become the most political thing in America during an election year? Like, so anyways, he gets into a back and forth with Leslie Jones, very funny comedian in my opinion, and he, trigger warning, he compared her to a gorilla, and that was where Twitter drew the line. It wasn't just he compared her to a gorilla. It was vicious white supremacists started attacking her on social media, and they kind of pinned the whole incident on him inciting it. So allegedly he was kicked off for inciting harassment and hate speech. And and at the time it was controversial because it's like, okay, because America, I gotta stress, we're in Canada. We don't have a thing called the First Amendment. I hate to quote one white nationalist I was watching on a video about Charlottesville, but there was the white Unite the Right, which is what caused the whole Charlottesville incident. There was a white nationalist dude from Canada, and he basically, on video, he's yammering about, I come from Canada where it's a crime to hurt people's feelings. Yeah, no, our country has in America, you can get fired for saying things, which is what sparks the whole censorship debate. But in Canada, not only can you get fired for saying stuff like that, you can face potential criminal charges because we're more intent. We crack down more on hate speech here than they do south of the border. So, from a Canadian's perspective, yeah, kick Milo to the curb, like that's really, really bad. But in America, and his popularity unfortunately kind of grew in that. Canceling him caused his popularity to grow. There was that, and him getting kicked off of Twitter. There was that, and then he tried to shortly after in 2017. Shortly after in the new year 2017, he is supposed to do a speaking engagement at Berkeley, and the students rioted to get him to not speak. And then it got to a point where President Trump at the time condemned the violence, and people were like, "Oh my God, Trump's actually has a point." Because like you can't like if you don't like what they're saying, don't go, but don't riot and burn down your campus just because you don't like it.
Is that the same event that Trigglypuff came from?
No, that was earlier. There was a right-wing There was a right-wing caucus at some campus, and unfortunately,
there was a lot of riots in those days.
Yeah, 6 years ago too. Yeah. No, I feel like 2016 was like where this Twitter.
It was an ugly time.
No, Twitter kind of reached a breaking point in 2016. Like, and you were using 2016 Twitter actively in 2016. And again, we had an election year, a very controversial election year. I would actually argue even more controversial than 2020. I mean, for the horror show that 2020 was, I would say 2016. You know, I'm talking about in the context of an election, not the year itself, because 2020. Yeah, if we make it that long,
was Pokemon Go the only fun thing to come out of 2016?
I don't.
That's funny now. Oh, so it's funny. That was 2015. Right,
Pokemon Go.
I thought I got
Pokemon Go. It came out. That wasn't the peak, but that was the peak of public interest in it because I actually have memories, and this is my reconstruction because memory is reconstructed.
Apparently,
but I think this is factual. I remember 2015 as the last good year, in the sense that it wasn't horrible. We still had climate-related issues and economic disparity. All the stuff we had, right, was still there, right? But it didn't feel as imminent, and we didn't yet have that thing where people spent so much time on these devices and then went out and actually started creating the very things that they were afraid of were actually in the world, right? That they saw through here.
Yeah.
Or at least, it's like I had a buddy who he had this way with women, right? And just go with me on this, right? Like he would have this kind of charisma with women. I used to think he has this, some type of trick, right? It's like whatever it is.
Right.
Until his girlfriend at the time then pointed out, he's like, you just assume that everyone's flirting with you. Because you assume that everyone's flirting with you, you engage you engage with them in conversation in a flirtatious way. Which means that you're actually flirting with them. They receive it as, this guy's flirting with me, and it's hit or miss. But eventually, you stay in that way of approaching things, the context in which you approach things. Someone will flirt back with you, and then you can go on a date and see where things go, right? Similar thing has happened afterward, which hadn't happened in 2015. I remember Pokemon Go was it was one of the best summers where people were wandering around the parks looking for Bulbasaurs and like running into each other and meeting each other in real life. But this was actually the thing guiding us.
Yeah.
Right? It actually led us to reconnect because of augmented reality, as opposed to what it would start doing a year later when it started weaponizing us against each other, fed largely by companies like Cambridge Analytica and Russian troll farms and Chinese troll farms and just all these things that started kicking up when they realized that this could be. I literally learned a term just an hour ago called cognitive warfare, right?
Right.
That hadn't happened yet. And Twitter was the easiest one to use because it had already been established, especially if you were a freedom fighter in Libya. They were just tweeting NATO the positions. They were DMing NATO
Yeah.
the positions of Gaddafi's forces, and NATO would just send in an airstrike based on the tweets.
Wow.
So that was when I think people realized, between Obama using Facebook and different applications of Twitter, like what happened in Libya, right? People realized, hey, we can turn this into a weapon.
Right.
And cognitive warfare is what we've been dealing with, a lot, especially since 2016, because that's when you had Trump talking about fake news. Okay, like let us give credit where it's due. The man, for whatever you think of his politics and himself and his character, is a branding genius.
He is.
The guy knows how to market himself.
I am the first to admit
not
that.
not to everybody, but when he in terms of brand loyalty, right? You can't do much better than Donald Trump because he knows how to command that. Even now, he lost the election, and yet still had so many people convinced that he was really running the government in secret.
Yeah, well, that was a whole... that had nothing... Well, actually, Twitter did play a part in the whole QAnon movement because...
It still does.
Yeah.
It still does. And it's the... and this is what I think... I'm not anti-tech. I'm not even anti-Twitter since I'm still on it. I have no choice, especially over the last 2 years of pandemic lockdown, right? This is the way that 99% of people interacted with each other, right?
Yeah.
In a big way. If you weren't lucky enough to have neighbors that you trusted or family members down the street, this is how you talk to people. This is how you see the world. And it's warped us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I look back on 2015 and Pokemon Go, and I think, 2015, last good year.
That was a monumental year for me, just because I took one of the, I traveled farther than I ever had. Like, geographically speaking, I took a 5-hour plane ride to LA, and it was cool to see another place and go that far across the world, because I didn't leave North America, but geographically. It's like another planet compared to the Great Lakes lowlands of Ontario. But culturally, LA feels very similar to Toronto and a lot of other cities in North America. So, but the point is, like, it was cool just to see a new landscape. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's notable, too, like using the Pokemon Go example, that within the context of what we're talking about, that the devices were actually bringing us closer together, and that's how we saw it at the time.
Yeah.
And I think, this is overly dramatic, but in some ways I wonder if that wasn't the pinnacle of social media, or at least or cell phones that way, because ever since then, it's been pitting us against each other.
That's a good point. I mean, gotta be honest, the one thing that everyone managed to come together over was, in the summer of 2019, we had this one genuine, little bit of agreement over 3 words. Epstein didn't kill him. Sorry, that's 4 words. Epstein didn't kill himself. That's the one thing in the last 4 years that we've been managed to agree on.
I mean, I agree with you. I don't know. There's still pockets by then.
I mean, I remember. Well, as of this recording, we're approaching the 2-year anniversary of the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, and what I remember actually, you saying on social media, there was a sense of when it became clear that everyone's got to hunker down and stay home for back when 2 weeks to flatten the curve seemed like the solution. I say seemed like everyone went into that 2 weeks. There was, despite the fact that we were all in our homes, there was a sense of togetherness because we were all jacked into our tech, and we were all talking to one another. And I remember you saying, we gotta. The government officials, everyone who's supporting a lockdown, and everyone was locking down. Even, I remember even after, a year and a half of, having our qualms with Doug Ford. For those of you around the world, Doug Ford is the local, he is the leader, he's the premier of the provincial government of Ontario. Point is, even we were giving him praise because he was like, yeah, no, this is serious. Stay home. Don't go out. Unless you have to.
I remember that 2 weeks, I just went home to my dad. And that 2 weeks later turned into 4 months away from Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and that means but the point is, in that time, it felt like, everyone, regardless of their views, agreed that the virus was a problem and we have to come together. Everyone dealt with it together. Everyone stayed home. The divide started to kick in after the 2 weeks passed, and then I'm not saying Trump was the cause of the divide because there was many other factors. He wasn't the cause of the divide, but there was QAnon. I remember before conspiracy theories gained traction, they were circulating on Twitter about what's going to happen after this 2 weeks. Like QAnon was predicting, the mass arrests are going to happen at the end of these 2 weeks. Trump is going to round everyone up, put them in, put the military tribunal, blah blah blah. That didn't happen, and then the rhetoric of "it's violating my freedoms" kicked in. A month and a half after the pandemic was declared, or 2 months into it, once the weather started warming up, right-wingers with guns started protesting at state capitals, saying "end these lockdowns" because it's the whole freedom crowd. And then, but look at where we are 2 years later, like in Canada and now the United States. As of this recording, literally in the moments we're recording, President Biden is giving his State of the Union speech before Congress, and there's a American Freedom Convoy equivalent headed for Washington D.C. if they're not there already. And I was listening to someone basically list off their demands for what they want. Their demands are crazier than the Canadian trucker demands. Yeah. So their grievances are also more hot-headed too. But anyway, so to kind of bring this conversation all home, how the heck do we go forward? There's no easy answer. And unfortunately, our global stability is even more shaky than it was 2 years ago because we've got a war between two powers in Europe, and it's not looking pretty. So
like your question, there's no how do we go forward? There's no easy answer. I take the easy out of that sentence. There's just no answer.
Right.
We're going forward anyway. We're moving through time. Tomorrow, the sun will rise, and etc. Like we're still moving through time, which means the events are playing themselves out.
Yeah.
Another question could be, right? How do we? What should we do? What ought we do? Right? And my solution for this is, first, okay, I am much more heavily active on Instagram, which also has its share of problems,
right?
Than I am on any other social media platform. But
I get very little
Twitter,
on Instagram.
I still get my news from there. But I want to be clear: when I say I get my news from there, it means I've read a headline.
Right. And Twitter's the same way.
If I see something that seems pertinent or interesting, I will click the article. What I won't do is reshare it without reading it. In fact, now Twitter prompts you to say, "Did you want to read this article before you reshare it?"
Right.
Which I find both reassuring because it's trying to curb disinformation, and also kind of the same thing doesn't happen when you retweet a tweet that has information in it.
Yeah.
Right. If the tweet has a link, you can just retweet anybody. It doesn't ask you, "Are you sure?" I wonder if. In terms of a UX experience, or at least trying to do that, maybe it may be best not to do that in terms of making it, in terms of flow, but maybe adding in, it's are you really sure you want to retweet what this person has just said?
Yeah.
Think about it, right? I think asking an "Are you sure?" prompt may be a short-term fix.
Right.
I've also heard today, I think it was either on TikTok or another platform, that they're trying to push 7-second videos. And there's one user who took a full 60 seconds to kind of point out that if they have identified, remember, all these platforms are designed to generate a dopamine rush when you get them. Everything from the notification lights on your phone to the fact that Facebook was predominantly blue and they have these red notifications, that triggers something.
Isn't it Meta now? I don't get that.
I'm sorry. Meta, you're right.
Oh my god!
And Instagram being a meta platform.
Take it up with Mr. Zuckerberg.
Yeah, Zucks. This is it. We have these things that have warped our brains, basically. So my thing is, and at the same time, if I'm a freelancer, which I am, and I'm marketing my services, this is still the best way to market. In fact, I'm not seen as legitimate. The social media platform, the Instagram account, is now seen as like, this is the new website.
Yeah.
Right? If you are not legitimate if you don't have it, they think you're just another shyster, right? They don't know.
Right.
So they think you're a con artist or maybe someone out there. The trustworthiness is gone, right?
Yeah.
So, my thing is to minimize the use of these devices. I keep saying it. Do I do it? Mixed results.
Yeah.
Even I've been sharing some stuff. Like I've been on this soapbox of not wanting to share more disinformation, and then I go and share something about the ghost of Kyiv.
Right.
It's like the ghost of Kyiv, this alleged ace in a day type of guy from the Ukrainian Air Force.
Yeah.
And I'm sharing him because I'm consciously aware. I'm aware that I want it to be true.
Right.
I'm aware of that. I love that type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because it fires people up, and especially people who are under siege, right?
Look at the.
But if it's not true, right? I have to take more care to point it out in my posts so that people don't get the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
I think there's a way you can do like a sort of like mental aikido with all of this and say, okay, look, I'm going to reshare this. I don't know if it's true. And just put that in your text, right?
Right. Yeah.
If you're honest about it, and it shows that you've thought about it, and which will encourage other people to think about it. I think like beyond that, if we survive the next year, or the next day, this has always been true.
Right.
Listen, nuclear missiles take 15 minutes to hit you. Anything could have, and they've been there for decades. I mean, it's just now we're reminded that they're there.
Well, I was listening. I have a job where I have the freedom to listen to a lot of content. I can consume whatever content I want while I work. I was listening to a guy. The fact that it's not that okay. So throughout the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union were on alert consistently with their nukes for decades. The only difference now is that the Cold War's been over, and now another country, the countries are heating up. The diplomatic relations are heating up right now. So it's not that. Did that alert ever really go away, even with the Cold War?
Yeah, and that's just it. Whether it was the nukes, whether it's nuclear war, whether it's disease, whether it's famine,
climate change.
That's the thing. The only thing that's been increasing in intensity, that's recorded by people who have no vested interest in a climate argument, is climate change.
Right? Yeah.
You need only look at insurance claims due to natural disasters over the last 10 years to say something's going on in the environment, maybe. Right?
Yeah.
If you don't believe the climate scientists, believe the insurance companies, because they're the ones that are leveraging everything, right?
Yeah.
When shit happens. But the point is this, right? We never know what's going to happen. A long-term solution may be to stop using online communities as a substitution for real ones where you live, and to go and actually walk down your street, which we can do now again, right? Before something else happens, right? The next thing comes to beat our ass into the ground next. And go get to know your neighbors, go get to know people who live in your neighborhood, and cultivate real life friendships. Like it's like you and I are like at a distance, but you and Lyle are in the same room.
Right, yeah.
Right? It's like you guys are a community of two. And whoever else is down the street, your neighbors across the hall, get to know them a little bit, right? And you don't need, I'm not saying hang out, I'm not saying...
Yeah.
I'm just saying at least someone that you can at least say good morning to. And that's where you get your sense of connection from, not from these things.
Well, that's why...
That's good. Yeah.
Well, that's why... Okay, so, our regular I kind of hope you do a show with them. I feel like you guys get a real good conversation. Our friend and regular on the show, Josh, he's getting married in May, and we're all invited to his wedding. The thing is, though, like a couple of us got invitations after like doing some podcasts with him, like how we're talking right now. So Josh has only met some of these people once, and it's like, oh, but I've known you through a video screen. Like, I have a relatedness to you. I want to get to know you in person. Come to my wedding. There was some shock that on behalf of some of us who had only met him in person once. But now there's a need to connect from that incentive, because it's like, yeah, look, before your wedding, let's spend a Sunday afternoon together. Like, and we're trying to do that. Just logistically speaking, but I mean, I fully agree with that sentiment. I think it's a very good idea.
Yeah, and I think like the opportunity in the reopening is to finally hop off of these things, right? Like again, this is this is now. Whenever you log in, you are now on the front line of cognitive warfare.
Exactly. Now,
right?
Also, I feel like this fear of cancellation, it's making us terrified to disagree. That's another problem.
Yes.
Because it's like, we forget that as human beings, disagreement is actually a beautiful thing. I feel like at this point, I would just be quoting, like, I don't know if Morgan Freeman actually said this, but I just saw an inspirational quote saying, just because I disagree with you doesn't mean I hate you. We need to remember that. I have no clue who said it, but it was plastered over Morgan Freeman's face, so maybe he said it. I don't know.
Yeah, there's variations of that. Like Anthony Bourdain said, I don't have to agree with you to like or respect you.
Yeah.
Right?
So like,
and the pontificating is like the problem. And I've been saying for the last little bit that Instagram, Twitter, Facebook are really good. They're really good soapboxes for self-expression.
Yeah.
What they suck at is when you get into the crosstalk, because you don't know if the person you're talking to is a Russian troll bot.
Yeah.
Not really.
Right.
You could maybe guess if you can maybe guess based on how provocative their responses are, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But even then, you don't know if it's a troll bot or a paid actor or like an actual person who actually doesn't like what you say, who's just really nasty, right? You don't know.
Yeah.
So having the crosstalk and the discourse, I would say have that in person too, wherever possible.
Yeah.
And don't do it through these things. And also the last thing too I'll add is that we're only seeing maybe 10 to 15% of what people can communicate on Twitter.
That's
true. It's all the words. There's no voice tone. There's no body language because there's no body.
Yeah.
Right? So if you saw somebody's raw distilled ideas, you're going to add in your own reaction to them in terms of how you perceive the emotion behind it, which means a lot of your close friends are going to turn into seriously evil people in your mind just based on the text that they've said.
Well,
if you can't catch those nuances.
Just to clarify, so this actually involves both of you. Today, as I'm recording this video, it's something to do with where the province in which we live in. Mm-hmm. In terms of COVID restrictions, today was the day that the province decided to lax a ton. The main restrictions are no more QR codes before you go into certain public places. Like, in other words, the establishment is no longer required by government law or mandate or whatever the term is to check to see if you're up to date with your vaccines for COVID, specifically COVID, because that's the only vaccine that they're monitoring. So I said, okay, I conducted a poll, and this poll could be answered on my Facebook feed, or my Facebook story, or my Instagram story. Instagram is where I constructed the poll, but the poll said this: do you agree with the government's decision to lax these mandates? Yes or no? And guess what? I was expecting I honestly am not. I wasn't sure where to stand on the issue, but I was kind of expecting on Instagram at least for the no's to pour in. At first they did, but it's actually almost it's a 48-52% divide, and both of you, full disclosure, you both said that you agree with the government's decision. Now, I specifically said in my poll, I am not looking for judgment. I am genuinely curious as to what you think, and I was. So I looked at all the people who voted yes, and you know what? The vast majority of them are not rabid anti-maskers and they're not these crypto fascists that we're scared of. This is the thing though. Like I know that these are good people and they believe what they believe for a reason. And if I want to talk to them about why they said yes, I can. Which is why I have the benefit of having you two here now, because you guys have been terrific at keeping safe these past 2 years from this virus.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I mean, I'm not judging you, but I now know, okay, you guys have all your shots. So, like, you guys support the laxing mandates for a reason. And I feel like we need to talk more about that.
So I would say this too.
Yeah.
It's not us that you need to talk to.
I know it's not
to
you.
the people. It's to the people you don't know.
That's true. Yeah.
What their status is, and you're curious, and we're willing to share it with you.
Yeah.
To ask them why, and that's what it is. This is because then again, we're in your community already.
Right. Yeah.
The key is that if you want to add more, or if you want to have connections with people who may be on the other side of it, how can you talk to them?
Yeah.
So, like, I'll share one today. I posted a little response. I work part-time in craft brewing at 2 different breweries. And
oh, nice.
I shared a reflection on Facebook. I think you saw it, Evan. And it's like...
I did, yeah.
I said as much as this is that, about if the government doesn't back up a COVID check, like a passport at the door, a business that continues to implement them now, at least for the time being, is putting their staff at risk from being kind of harangued by the more extremists of what, the people who are, the convoy people, right? Or the anti-mask people or the anti-mandate people.
Just the fact that everyone has a label, because do you know the people who don't want to wear masks, they have labels for the people that do want to wear a mask, and they're equally as ugly.
And that's just it. Like, there's ugliness there too, but like, real harm can ensue. We had one of our taproom managers get harassed by a guy who came in, refused to show the passport when it was active, and didn't want to mask up. And then he yelled at her and said, "Don't you know people are fighting for your freedom?" She was alone in the brewery, right?
Yeah, I read that.
Dude, right? This big dude yelling at her, and she had to kick her. She had to threaten to call the cops. And it's like, this is the type of stuff that happens. So I was sharing about that and did a reflection piece. And one of my friends, who I know is not only an anti-vaxxer, but has purchased the book of a dissident medical professional who I know made an appearance at a far-right political rally, right? Even though this person is one of my older friends, she wrote something that I picked up on a little bit of, hypocrisy in it, I guess you can call it.
Yeah.
And my reaction was like, I know it's her. I know that if we were talking in person, that this would just be more casual, right? I would probably react, but I wouldn't feel this I felt the adrenaline running through my veins. I was like, I'm about to get into an argument with someone I care about, right?
Right, yeah.
Because she didn't occur to me as a friend at that point. I was only looking at the comments. And I was like, I kept my response brief. I said, I hear you, and I want to point out the presence of the very thing you spoke against of in your own statement, right? Yeah. And then I was like, I had to go to the gym. So I put my phone down. For those 5 minutes, I'm still in this adrenaline fight-or-flight response. Yeah. I get there and realize, she kind of clarified what she said, and then I said, there's more things that we can debate, but it's like, there's no point in debating here if I'm just going to feel this way doing it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to see her as an honest broker because of my hormonal state, right?
Right, yeah.
So I said, you know what, I calmed down, did a few reps, and then said, I pivoted away from the topic, and I said the healing has to take place outside, in person, outside of these devices. And she agreed. So it's like the situation is disarmed, and then when I get my higher functions back after the adrenaline rush, now I can have a good conversation.
Yeah.
And I can't do that if the entirety of the conversation, or the majority of it, is on this device.
Right, yeah.
Or is on this platform. And it's the same for yourself, right? The key is and she's somebody that I know supported the Convoy, who I never would have suspected would have supported the Convoy.
Yeah.
And this is what we have to deal with now, because the raison d'etre of the convoys and these protests are about to be completely gone in Canada.
Right.
Right. No masks within a month. This is what I've heard for Ontario. Alberta lifted everything today. Right. So at that point, if you're still doing a freedom convoy, you're no longer doing it to oppose vaccine mandates, because there's no mandates left.
Yeah.
Right. So what are you doing it for? Now you're going to be exposed. The movement will be exposed for what it is. Right.
That's true.
All the people that were there for that issue will stay home. The only people riding the convoy are not playing in good faith. So I digress.
Well, it kind of goes back to
we're going to need some time to kind of like decompress from this, right?
Well,
and eventually we will be able to live together. Not naturally, we have to work at it, but we're going to have to live with each other now.
That's
how we
true.
Talk to each other,
that's true.
And how we talk to each other matters, right?
Well, it's kind of something. I don't want to speak for Lyle, but Lyle, do you?
I can speak.
So
I've been very quiet this episode.
No,
I apologize.
yeah, no. It's kind of like we're trying to be as inclusive as possible. Do you remember? Do you remember? As we're talking about this, it kind of reminds me of that time you had that. The reason, case in point, the reason you stopped reviewing movies on Facebook.
I've already talked about this enough. Yeah. I don't like having dissentful comments when I post something. It gives me like a lot of stress. Like, I've done this on YouTube now. I've stopped commenting on YouTube a lot of the time, because then they say, I don't know, someone will point something out. I'm like, oh, I feel kind of dumb right now. Like, I've checked myself a lot more lately. I don't even really post on Facebook fucking anymore. Like, I just
that's true, but
I don't like doing that anymore, because it just seems useless. And if it's that dopamine rush, it's like, if I don't get likes, if I don't get responses, it just makes me feel like I'm alone in a vacuum. And that's a sign that maybe I shouldn't depend on Facebook so much to get validation. So that's more of that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely don't like. I'm kind of actually phasing out of social media. I barely get anything out of Instagram anymore. I just use it to look at other people's pics and stuff. But
not only that, we're in a situation where if I want to promote projects I'm working on, we have to use it. I have to use it. You have to use it. So, like for your Moody Boy music, like you got to use it too.
It doesn't really help though.
I mean, that's.
I don't have any traction on social media really.
Well,
I don't know why, but it just is.
That's
how it is.
Well, it's I guess that's like a conversation for another day, and I guess before we get Jody going on, a whole, entrepreneur. Jody, this is where Jody would typically step in and say, "Well, actually, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, because Jody's been around the game for."
I mean, I've talked a lot in this one, so I mean, that's all good. No, but that's definitely a whole other thing.
But yeah, like I didn't want to tell the story on your behalf, but it just reminded me of that time where we went to see Black Panther, and the rest is history.
Oh yeah, I gave it a 6 out of 10 on Facebook.
Which is not a bad review.
People got mad at me.
No. It wasn't just people got mad.
Someone wrote me a fucking essay as to how wrong I was.
I read this. It was crazy. Like, so we go see 6 out of 10 is not a bad review. My coworker, who is Black, wrote him saying, "Oh,
no, you just didn't get it."
Like he said, you just didn't get it. And then your ex was like,
"No, she wasn't my ex. It was a girl I had a huge crush on in high school. She wrote me a fucking essay as to." So that hurt even more. That was like salt in the wound.
Wow.
But then it's like lately, anytime I have a conversation about Black Panther, there are people who agree with me. It's like, it's not that great, but I understand why people love it. It's like, I'll concede if people love it. I'll let them have it. I would never take that away from them. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I have to temper myself when I talk about Black Panther sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel that way about everything nowadays, so here we are.
I so very badly want to ask on the air what you thought of it, but that too is a whole.
We made a whole episode.
I made an episode about my thoughts.
You did? Okay. Yeah, we talked about it.
Go watch.
Listen,
Go watch our.
Once again, it felt
your
like
old one, yeah.
Once again, I felt
We
like
can
I was
establish,
walking
I think,
on
that Marvel
eggshells.
movies are made on a plot template, which means you kind of know how it's going to go.
Yeah.
It's just like the elements are there. It's just how they rearrange it. And with Black Panther, I mean, I enjoyed it, but I could understand if you gave it a 6 out of 10 at the time that it came out. How you get that response? So I'll take a listen to the episode.
My opinions of it have softened since then, so I feel it's better than when I'm first viewing. It was better on second viewing. I will say that. So my thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of Black Panther, you know Letitia Wright, right? She was she actually got like a lot of shit on Twitter because she was like saying for the vaccinations. This is actually a good way to kind of bring it all home. She said that she wouldn't get vaccinations because she wasn't quite. Not that she is just an anti-vaxxer. She's not pushing any agenda. She just says, "I don't want to put something in my body if I'm not sure what it is. I'm a little wary. I'm a little skeptical." And she got backlash for that. And she just straight up deleted Twitter.
Which
she removed all her social media platforms.
To be honest, vaccine hesitancy because you're not sure what's in it. That's real. That's real. But like, people have a right to be concerned. I can point out the hypocrisy of how you'll look up the ingredients of the vaccine, but you won't look up the ingredients of the candy bar that you just bought at the gas station. Mm-hmm. So there's that. But at the same time, if I'm going to get something that's going to prevent a deadly disease, I want to know what's in it. But it's not that I'm overly concerned with what's in it. I want to make sure that it's safe.
Well, I mean, cyberbullying is always going to be an issue with any social media. But you look at look at some of the people who worked on Star Wars, like Daisy Ridley or Kelly Marie Tran. They straight up had to remove Twitter because they kept getting lambasted on those things.
So we talked about the Gina Caranos, and then there's the Daisy Ridley, Kelly Marie Tran incident where their social media accounts no longer exist.
I mean, sometimes it just...
Hey, Kelly Marie Tran even left acting for a while.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was.
Disney gave her a stint with Raya and the Last Dragon, which I thought was pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing. Bottom line, moral of the story is be careful when you work on Star Wars. It's not always such a happy story.
That's another whole other topic. The toxicity of the Star Wars fandom.
Whether you're Mark Hamill and you get typecasted for the rest of your life, or you're the guy, I forget his name, I always forget his name, but the guy who played Jar Jar Binks.
Hamid Best.
Yeah, Hamid Best, that's his name. Or Jake Lloyd, where you're just going to get picked on and ridiculed till the end of time. Or even
Jake Lloyd had a good stint on the Butterfly Effect after that, though.
Right.
It's like the younger version of the troubled kid version of the antagonist. So.
Yeah, I'm sure he did some things, but he developed a lot of issues afterwards because of all the bullying. I think he actually developed schizophrenia or something because of that.
Yeah. And what I thought was both funny but I'm not really sure if if it was cool laughing.
Let's talk about something funny.
So,
I got to go in a few minutes anyway, but yeah.
So
wrap it up.
The point is, Twitter, it can be our societal discoursing. Twitter plays a real part in it. it's all I say we should kind of understand that there's more value in our community and the people we know and see every day than there is on interacting with a caricature of someone on the other side of the world. Or on the other side of town, because we need to talk more to each other than we do to our social media avatars, and so that's I feel like that's really all we can really say. It's been a great show. I loved getting you two together for this interesting discussion. We covered a lot.
Yeah, but guys, I gotta say you both failed. I still don't want to get Twitter. So,
was this a litmus test?
Was this an episode?
Was this to persuade you to get Twitter? Because that was never going to be a thing I was going to do.
Good, because if anything, this just kind of makes me just want the 10-foot pole. No, not even. I never want to touch it with a 2,000 foot.
So now you want a 2,000-foot pole?
Oh yeah.
Honestly, I think if not only are you not going to go into Twitter, but if if you heard what we said and you haven't decided to even withdraw from some of your other platforms, right?
Yeah.
Like just to avoid the nonsense. I mean,
I was gonna say, yeah, it just seems like a huge amount of white noise and drama and issues, and like, I'm not saying like I would say dumb things intentionally on Twitter. It's just like just any little thing can really hurt you in the long run, or bite you in the ass. You know, it's like. You gotta be very careful with social media. Anyone can find it. I feel like that's the thing. Like people are starting to use the internet as like a personal diary, but the point of a diary is that it's personal. So why?
Oh, but that's been the case since LiveJournal, though.
Exactly.
Right.
But like, yeah, just people always want to say what they want. They want the validation and the dopamine, the attention.
Yeah, if you have a blog, that's one thing, but it's the again, as you said, it's the dopamine rush that these platforms give you. That's the thing, and. We're all on drugs. Let's try to get off drugs.
Yeah.
Amen.
So anyways, thank you, gentlemen, for coming together tonight and having this conversation. It's been fun. We will see you next time. Jody, we always love having you on the show, and we look forward to having you back.
Very insightful. Very good.
Awesome.
Cool. Have a good night, guys.